And welcome to another episode of Expert Speak. I'm Michael DeLon. Today I'm talking with Connor Moyer. And Connor, dude, thanks for spending some time with me and being my guest today.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you are welcome. It's going to be great. So Connor is the founder of Smart Solutions Group, where they work with business owners creating winners in sales and management. And I want to dive into that because that is something we don't talk a lot about. And I know, dude, I've been in sales all of my life, right? And I've had winning seasons and I've had some, well, losing seasons. And sometimes it gets depressing, but I know there are ways to get back on the field, to have a great coach and to say, here's how you become a winner more consistently. And that's what we want to talk about. So as we jump into this great conversation, Connor, tell me, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
So I've had a interesting background and I've had a lot of different experiences. So I actually, I'll go on a brief little, take you through my brief journey
Sure.
here as I got to where I'm at today. But played sports growing up, played about everything, ended up playing football at University of Memphis, got into, well, let me back up, went to school for business. And I always said when I graduated, I said two things. I'm for sure not going to teach, and I'm absolutely not going back to school. That was it for me. And sure enough, 3 months later, I was back in school working on a master's degree in education, and I was teaching, crazy enough.
Wow.
So the way that came about was after I was done playing football, there was a void in my life that resulted in not having that activity anymore. And
Mhm.
a way for me to fill it was go back and volunteer at a local high school to coach.
Hmm.
So I started out actually at Collierville High School down just outside of Memphis, Tennessee. Went over there, volunteered. Guy named head coach there, shout out to him. But Mike O'Neill gave me my first chance at coaching, and ever since then, it's set a hook in me that I can't shake. And I've gravitated towards coaching ever since my entire life. So long story short, ended up going through a couple years of teaching, coached for about 5 years, went to the corporate route, started climbing the corporate ladder, worked for a few different companies in operations, sales, management, the whole suite of things. And finally got to where about a year ago, I decided to go out on my own. And this is where this whole idea was really conceptualized out of. And it was another point in my life where I took a 7 year break from coaching, and I'm down in Charlotte, North Carolina now. And I called the local high school there. I said, I got to figure out what I'm doing here. Like I was again missing. I had that void. I was missing something. So I went back and called these guys. I said, hey, I've coached for 5 years. I played in college. I don't want any money, and I just want to come help. And so they took my call and brought me in, talked to those guys, and so finished my first season with them this past year, and going on a second one now. And so it was a really good reminder now, having a business background after going through what I did, to come back to coaching and realize how many parallels there were to sports, and not necessarily just football. Football is again my example, but any sport doesn't matter. You can fill in the blank. And in the business world, and especially sales and management, there's so many lessons we can learn from players, from coaches, from practices that carry over, and that's how we develop the company. We take the same framework and we move it over to business.
That's very cool. All right, so let's dive into it. And thanks for that background because that's really cool to just see how, yeah, never say never, right? I'm never going to do that. And God just shows up and says, "You want to bet?"
I think that's what that was.
It's happened to us many times, brother. Um, so let's talk about this. You've got a phrase, and I'm not sure where I picked up, but it's like winning doesn't just happen. And I love that because in sales and management, nothing really just happens. You've got to practice. And I've heard so many people say, well, practice makes perfect. It's like, well, no, it actually doesn't. Practice makes permanent. And if you practice wrongly, you're going to have a really bad season. So talk about some of those parallels that you've seen between sports and business and how that plays out to really help your clients get better and have better winning seasons.
Yeah, I love what you just said there, actually, and the practice makes permanence, because that's a unique take on it that not everybody, I think, fully comprehends, and especially unless you've been in that scenario in both worlds. Um, it's very true, and so I say this: there's a lot of people that work hard. So I'll tell you a quick story about when I was in Memphis. I was sitting in a meeting room with our defensive line coach, and um, he looks at me, and of everybody, he picked me. Of course, I was a freshman, and he asked me a question in front of everybody, and he goes, "Connor, what's the key to success?" And I said, "Hard work." And he goes, BS. And I was shell shocked. That's what I was taught growing up was if you work hard, you'll make it.
Yep.
And I thought that was it. I'll just work hard. And I never thought about it until that one moment. I remember it like it was yesterday. It's a very vivid memory for me. And he said, there's a lot of people that work hard that go nowhere. And
Mhm.
that stuck with me because going on again, your phrase there of practice makes permanence, not necessarily practice makes perfect. And I
Right.
thought about that. So there are a lot of people that work hard, and there's a difference between people who win and people who don't. And Michael, you can run in sales, you can run this exact same deal as me. We can talk to them the same way. We can give them the exact same pitch, word for word. And there might be a reason you close it, and maybe I don't. But
Yeah.
there's something there. And a lot of people say, "Oh, it's just this one didn't work, or this one it was just timing." And we don't talk about winning because in the business world, it's hard to talk about. It's hard to define, and it's a more of a controversial topic because a lot of people say that there's this way to win and it's all this there's not really general consensus around it. It's hard to teach,
Yeah.
which is where the sports comes into play for us. So you look at every great dynasty. So I'll pick John Wooden, Nick Saban, Belichick, or Brady, depending on what side of that battle you're on. But um, all of those guys created something that was bigger than themselves. They created a legacy. They created a winning culture. And if we deep dive into, I won't get too granular here, but if we deep dive into what they did to specifically create a repeatable success model, they didn't just have their players show up and work. Everyone does that. And I can tell you from my college experience, we actually were the number one ranked hardest summer camp on ESPN my freshman sophomore year at Memphis,
Wow.
and we did not have the record to reflect that. I can tell you that right now. And so it's another reminder of again, practice. Just because you work hard doesn't mean it's perfect. So in the concept of winning, when we look at trying to create a winner, um, if you do all the little things, you're not guaranteed to win. But if you don't do the little things, you are guaranteed to lose. So
Yeah.
there's a tough relationship there. So the first and most important thing is to define what winning looks like. And I guarantee you, Saban, John Wood, and all these guys did the same thing. Winning looks different.
Yeah.
Winning is how a practice went. Winning is the things that their players took away from a film session. Winning is their attitudes every day. Winning isn't necessarily just the result of the scoreboard. And you've got to accumulate all those little processes, all those little steps in a flow. And when you win at all those little things, then the scoreboard more than likely will show that the win at the end of the game, right? But all
Absolutely.
those little things come into play, and it's so important to make sure that we focus on those. And a lot of people miss that. A lot of people. So I'll take the sales world real quick, for example. There's a lot of people out there that push sales methodology. They talk about spin or medic or gap selling or the challenger model, all those different ones. And again, it's sales methodology. It's all the little things, right? But there's more than that because we know based on sports that just because you have a system in place doesn't mean it's going to work. I can
Right.
create. I don't. I'm not. I was a defensive player. I'm not an offensive expert, but I can create an offensive playbook and think, okay, this is great because I'm going to draw up my plays. I'm going to say, okay, this is going to work based on this defense. Well, the reason you draw plays up is because it's supposed to work theoretically. We all
Right.
know Mike Tyson said it best. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face,
Right.
right? As soon as that first blow comes, you've got to redirect, you've got to change, you've got to be adaptive, you've got to be able to think on your feet. So there's a lot of intangibles in business that come into play, and a lot of people don't focus on that. So we take a unique approach in not only helping to reinforce the tactical elements of sales, but also the strategic stuff where we go into the intangibles. How do you interact with people? The way you speak, the way you communicate. Is your message clearly received? Um, Again, quick, like too many words becomes white noise, right? So some people, like I'm doing right now, rambling on a little bit, but it's very common. And
It
so all those little things can hurt.
absolutely. Absolutely. You're the inside game, the little things. I go back to John Wooden. I read his book years ago. And I mean, first day of practice. These are college basketball players. They've been playing for 15, 20 years. He's like, I'm going to teach you how to put on your socks and tie your shoes. Because that's a little thing. And he says, we're not going to worry about the scoreboard because when we do all these little things right, the scoreboard takes care of itself when you do everything right. And I thought that was a really good piece. He just boiled it down to the basics. And I think so many times in sales, let's just stay on that camp, right? We all know it. Yeah, whatever. And no, you don't, because you need somebody like Connor to look in and say, you know what? You could help me a lot, Connor. My son, who's my chief operating officer, Caleb, he listened to a few of my Zoom calls, and we auditored them. And audit just, it's a transcript, but it tells you how much percentage wise do I talk versus my prospect. And it came back, and I was talking like 75, 80% of the time. And he said, Daddy, you need to shut up. Yes, son, I will. But without him looking into my sales process, it would never change, right? Because I got into a groove, and unfortunately that groove became a grave. And I think we need people like you to come in and diagnose and help and go, are you winning as much as you need to be? Are you doing the things that will help you close more sales, serve more people? Talk about how do you come alongside organizations and really just work with them? What's it look like?
Yeah, so we do a couple different things. The first one, so I'll stick on the sales side for now, just to start off with that. So we offer a couple different um, services that we've helped. We've helped a few clients now that we've seen really, really good results. And I've got some white papers and stuff coming, some case studies to help show the actual statistics behind them. But we start off with an assessment. We'll come in with an organization and we'll create more or less a scorecard, not necessarily numbers, but it'll be, red, yellow, green. And what it does is it allows us to dive into the way people go to work and the whole go to market strategy, the entire sales thing from beginning to end. And there's a lot that's encompassed in that, right? Go to market's a entire like it's a huge monster of a topic. It's complex and it's hard. We work with a lot of people that fortunately are down to earth enough to realize that they don't know all the answers. And there's a lot of people that think they do know all the answers, and that's fine. But the ones that are realistic enough to say, hey, I don't know everything. I probably could use another set of eyes here. We go in, we have that assessment. We talk about our findings. We say, here's the gaps that we found based on what we've seen other winning organizations do. And again, we relate it back to coaching. So based on we can tie everything directly one to one. I love how you talked about the talk time and going back and watching the recordings of your sales process. I love that because we equate that in our world to watching film. Every time, so we equate a deal as a game, right?
Yeah.
Leading up to a deal. So that call that begins the deal process, that's first quarter. Everything you do that before that's pregame. And in the pregame phase, you better be watching film. You better be refining your own sales process. You better refine the way you interact with people. But not only that, you also better be cognizant of who you're talking to at least enough to where you can speak intelligently enough to their background. You've done a little digging on them, and same as sports, right? You don't go into a game and just guess what they're going to run. You break down tendencies. You look at what they do most of the time. What kind of clients do they normally take on? What kind of third party people do they usually work with? And you try to develop that more or less an intel web and insights into how you play the game, so that when that quarter one starts, you're effective in all four quarters in moving the ball, right? Every time the possession's in our hands, we want to move the ball forward, and that's a goal on every single call in the deal process. So I love that you brought that up, because it's one thing that we take very seriously. We go back and we watch videos with people, and we walk them through. Well, real time, we sit there and say, okay, we'll pause it and say, okay, listen to what you just said there.
Right.
Pick out something that you think maybe wasn't the best thing to say, or something that could have been elaborated on a little bit better, or something you could have cut out altogether. And even that alone, we've seen huge results in people that finally come to the realization that something that they're doing may not be the most effective, right?
Right.
And it's the same as an athlete. We go back and we film our practices, even at high school level. We film our practices. Why? Because we want to make sure that we understand the way we're playing. We want to, and it goes towards building your team identity. So, sales assessment, we help with aligning with the founders, the C-suite level on identifying and understanding what their team identity is. What does that look like for you? What kind of a organization do you want to be on the sales side? And we go from there. We work within that framework, and if we need to tweak it a little, we will. And we start with the assessment. We go into full go-to-market strategy, so we can either give recommendations, or oftentimes they'll ask for help with implementation on it. So we will actually go in and help implement different sales processes, and all the things we found in the assessment. We'll help them implement that. So the next natural step in this is, as we progress down towards the end of the game, that the talent management part. And this is where the sales training comes into play. When we've got the sales process refined, now we look at each individual person and we say, okay, let's make sure we're all trained. So we do a 30-day training usually. And it's not always 30 days. Sometimes we do a workshop, last a couple of days. We'll go on site, we'll do a workshop for somebody. We'll talk over a general bucket of industry relevant skills and topics, and things like the way a buyer thinks.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't a whole lot of people that unfortunately receive training, formal training or good training on the way a buyer's mind might work, and
That's right.
industry specific too. Just because I'll use supply chain as an example. A supply chain person might have a totally different mindset and different pain points in the way they perceive the need for action might be different than the healthcare industry, or might be different than the sports industry, right? It's totally different. And so having a good understanding of even like things like the way a buyer thinks. So
Mm.
we take all that into consideration. So we do workshops, we do 30-day trainings, and then full go-to-market assessments and strategies.
Wow. All right. So that's sales side. Now you also do management consulting as well, right? Talk a little bit about that, and how does that differ from what you're doing with sales? And how does that
Well,
help companies?
yeah, it's a very similar approach actually in the way we go about it. So we now look at it through the lens of a coach. So if we're working with managers, we're working with, again, in the sports world, an up and coming coach. Maybe it's a person that's an offensive coordinator that wants to be a head coach. That's, again, just
Mm-hmm.
setting the stage for the way we think about this.
Right.
We look at different things. We work with managers of all levels. We look at frontline. We work with frontline managers and like a lot of like manufacturing industries, and we work all the way up to executive level. And what we do is we define the way they interact with their employees. We look at the way that they. Common problem is, I'll use manufacturing for example. I was in it for a while, and one of the biggest challenges for a manager in manufacturing is that the building's always on fire, and you're typically not really able to get away from the operation for too long before
Mm-hmm.
something else gets set on fire, right? And
Right.
so it's a very limited time window. Because of that specific reason, that those managers are underserved in training. Oftentimes, they don't get the training they need to because it's hard. It's hard to train those guys, and the solution for the fires obviously is trying to prevent them. You can't prevent all fires. There will always be a fire somewhere, but you can drastically reduce the number of fires that happen.
Yeah.
So we go in, we help set things like routines, management routines, the way you interact with your employees, the way you manage your employees, the way that you again get ahead of the preventative stuff. How can you take a step back and think bigger picture and set a strategy? So again, we kind of progress things down. So we
Yeah.
start with like, the higher the foundation aspect, then we move over to the strategy bucket, and then we move over to tactical. So
Mm-hmm.
tactical would be like management routines, right? Well, strategy would be like, what specifically do I want my team to work on, and what are my outputs? What is my end goal that I want to get to?
Right.
And that's all within the foundation of the company's identity. So we get pretty granular into that stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool, because business owners many times don't. They don't get granular in that. They expect it to happen, and there's a disconnect somewhere, right? It's kind of like the general manager of a baseball team, or they're saying, okay, we're going to go after the pennant. Well, it trickles down, and the guys are like, we might be able to win 3 games this year. And it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? No, 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 no. Let's go back. And looking at talent management, I'm sure sometimes there are people that you need to trade to another team, and there are people that you need to bring on and recruit and to go, okay, but here's how we do things. I'm sure if somebody moves from the Patriots to the Jacksonville Jaguars, they probably have different ways of training and things and different mindsets, and you have to align yourself with the ownership, which I love how you're bringing that together to go, we've got to have this machine if we're going to build a dynasty, and we're all part of it. And guess what? We're all going after the same thing. And every year cannot be a rebuilding year, right? There are
Right.
rebuilding years, but we have to be going after that prize. And when everybody's together and everybody gets rewarded and you're a team, it works a lot better. Is that kind of what you found?
Absolutely. I think you put that perfectly. And again, if you think of the flow and the way we work with people, the foundation part, that's a vision, right? That's the end goal of where the company wants to get to. And I love that because every year can't be a rebuilding year. And there are a lot of managers that use it almost as a deflecting tool. They're
Yeah.
like, well, we don't have the right talent, we don't have this. The problem is sometimes they're right. Sometimes there are people that, as you say, need to be traded. Absolutely. Sometimes there are people that kill culture. Sometimes there are people that just aren't as competent as they need to be in their positions. But oftentimes you've got people that are serviceable. You've got people that have the ability to step up and be a leader. They're usually not enabled in the way that makes them successful, though, which
Right.
is the way we want to go about doing this. I
Yeah.
listened to a really great podcast the other day. I actually posted something on LinkedIn about it, but it was Ken Griffin said something about the future of leadership, and it was a quick 30-second segment on this that I thought was really, really good insight as he was talking about how it relates to remote work. And one thing that he saw in the world that he's in was because of remote work and the lack of interaction, there's been a natural lack of training and development,
Mhm.
which is creating a big vacuum, a hole for future leadership. So as companies are thinking about succession planning and moving down the chain and think, okay, look at our leaderboard. What kind of talent do we have on the table? Who can potentially step up and go here and go here? Uh, there are people now that don't have the same training, and we're going to expect those people to step up. Well, when the time comes and they strike out, well, we haven't trained them the right way,
Right.
and what's going to happen is naturally, obviously deflecting. Well, it's the person,
Right.
not always the person. There's a lot of
Rarely.
great people out there,
That's right. Yeah.
and we're doing them a disservice if we're not providing them the right tools and resources. Again,
Yeah.
it goes back to the whole reason I coach and the reason I do this. That I'll spend all those hours in a voluntary manner is because my root passion is helping to develop other, very specifically helping to develop other people, which is why this company was, and it's a just a glaring lack right now. And I thought Ken did a really good job in stating that because it shows where the future of leadership could be headed if we don't course correct and bring in people, not even just myself, but people who, anybody who can do some leadership training or some managerial training and help promote those leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a great a phrase on, I think is your website, is that winning doesn't just happen. And I want to camp there for just a second because if the people in your company haven't been trained, if your managers haven't been trained, they don't know how to train somebody else, right?
Right.
And that's why you need to bring Connor in and talk with him to say, how do we start training maybe at the highest levels and then bring it down to the lower levels instead of just beating up on your salespeople because they're not hitting quota. Let's pull it up a little bit and look at the operations and look at the leadership and look at the what vibe are we giving. And I mean, it might be a head coach change, you know. That's hard to do when you own a company, but sometimes it's a mindset to go, yeah, it's not as bad as you think it is, but here are some of the things that are missing. And oh, by the way, we can fill those gaps pretty simply with our process and our system. What I mean, is that am I right on that? Am I fair?
I think you're spot on.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Because I mean, I've been in business for a long time and been corporate America and
Mm.
rare was the day that I got any training. They expect you to know this stuff. I'm like, I don't know how, I don't know why, but okay. So I think that's the value of it. And what we find is if when you have a well-trained staff, your business runs smoother. You have fewer fires, right? You have greater customer service, better engagement with prospects, and your sales get better almost naturally. I mean, there are some things that you have to do, but when you can look back in and say, hey, y'all, shut up. Don't say things like that. Say things like this, build relationships, and you're going to have a winning team. You're going to create fans of your company, right?
Absolutely. And I'll use one quick thing I learned back when I was working for Coca-Cola. I had a manager that opened my eyes to just a different way to go about things, and it was really impactful. And during this time, one thing I learned from him that I thought was really important was the ripple effects you have as a leader. And not everyone thinks about that, right? It's all business focused. It's KPIs. It's managing on KPIs and making sure people are hitting quota or whatever their job is. They're checking off all the boxes every day. And if you did that, you had a good day. And going to again back on your lack of development part, when when a person has a great manager or a really poor manager, it shows. And the ripple effects are huge, not just in the corporation, but in the personal lives. So you think about the person that has a really terrible manager, and maybe they feel like they're micromanaged because that manager just learned how to do that from the guy above him, and maybe again didn't have formal training. That was the way I was trained, so I'm going to do it this way too. don't know any better, and most people don't. It's a lot of times it's an honest mistake. It's not malicious. It's not anything like that. They just really don't know a different way to do it. And so we think about the person that goes home every day after work. They're at the job because they need the money. They need to, they got a family to support, and their quality of life has gone down significantly because every day of work they go there and it's not what they're looking for. It doesn't fulfill them at all, and the ripple effects are terrible, or they're great depending on what kind of manager it is, right? And so you think about energy going out and coming back in. So they go home, they take home all of the bad energy, they come back, and morale just continues to drop and drop and drop. And what we don't think about enough was, yeah, KPIs are important. We need to keep the business running. But as you stated perfectly, if your people are happy and you're able to manage them in a way that they're progressing and getting better, they're going to do that for you. They're going to take care of the scoreboard, whether it's a salesperson or a frontline level employee. In the sales world, a happier salesperson who's got a better quality of life, going home smiling, happy when he goes back to his family, is going to come back recharged or rejuvenated, oftentimes more than not. And same goes the inverse relationship. So it's important. It's very important, and that's all part of winning.
Well, it really is. And it's funny. As we start wrapping this up, it hit me the football analogy of winning teams, right? So I'm a big Indianapolis Colts fan, but it doesn't matter which professional college team. It doesn't matter. They have multiple coaches. They have a quarterback coach and a linebacker coach and this coach and that coach, because every team member, every position needs a coach. And what Connor and his team come in and do is help you as the business owner, number one, understand the sales and management aspects. Where are you today? Where are the holes? How do we help coach you and your people so that we can make them coaches, in a sense, create a winning team, a winning environment? And this is not some purple pill that happens overnight. I mean, this is a process. But what happens is you actually transform people. And when people start getting transformed, your employees are happier, their families are happier, they get better results, your customers are served better, your business grows because you, the business owner, have taken the time and made the investment to build into your people, which really is your greatest asset. So,
Right.
Obviously, Connor, I'm a big fan of what you do. But how do people
Appreciate that.
reach out to you to learn more and to say, how do I see if this is a good fit for me and my company, and could you actually help me? Where would they go to find you and more information?
Yeah, so a couple different ways. Find me on LinkedIn first and foremost. Please connect with me. I have new connections every day on LinkedIn. I've met so many great people the past year I've been doing this, and so LinkedIn's a great place. I live there. I'm on it all the time. So find us on LinkedIn. Connor Moyer. Check me out on LinkedIn. My company page is there as well. Smart Solutions Group. I also the website Smart Solutions Group, smrtsolutionsgroup.com. And the last one is directly by email. You can go ahead and email at info@smartsolutionsgroup.com.
Excellent. I'm going to grab some of those and put them in the show notes so that our busy business owners who are putting out fires right now and listening to this, as they do that, they can actually go to the show notes, click on one of those links, connect with Connor, have a conversation, and say, Connor, this is where we are, and we want to create a dynasty. How can you help us do that? And just start a conversation. And you'll be amazed at what he's going to be able to reveal to you and see if this is the next step forward for you so that you can help create a winning culture and environment in your business. Connor, man, thank you. Thank you for being who you are and doing what you do, bringing your background and weaving it into helping business owners create winners and make a bigger impact and really transform the lives of their people. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, happy to do it. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being my guest on Experts Speak today. Hope everybody tunes in again for another great episode next week. Take care and God bless.